Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show, where we get to the heart of why you overeat and how to stop. If you struggle with food and weight like I did, welcome home. Welcome to the Heal Your Hunger Show. So happy to have you here. It is a great day to be alive, and I'm really excited about today's topic. This is really important if you want overcoming emotional eating. It's never going to happen if you don't really dig into this and overcome this problem of negative self-talk. Okay? Say something nice for once. So before I get into the topic, I want to really invite you to come to the Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating group. This is on Facebook. You go to Facebook, you type in Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating, and bam, request to join, and we will gladly let you in if you're somebody who's really striving to eat better, treat yourself better, and say nice things to yourselves. So that's what we do there. We jump in and we comment and we support each other and we share ideas and inspiration, and I record live there often and have guests. I mean, all kinds of good stuff. You're the first to know about new events and special pricing on things. So yeah, join us. It's free. Go to Secret Sauce to End Emotional Eating. Join us in that group. Also, if you haven't taken the quiz to find out if you're an emotional eater or a food addict, definitely check that out, because if you're here and you're not really sure when I talk about emotional eating, like, am I an emotional eater? You can take the quiz and you can find out for sure, and you'll get a personalized score telling you where you are on the spectrum, because that's really a spectrum. So go to healyourhunger.com for that. And now on with the show. So I want to talk to you about this problem of negative self-talk, because it is awful. Like, emotional eaters are meanies. I mean, we are meanies, right? Like, we are not nice to ourselves. And we say really just degrading, demeaning, and hurtful things to ourselves, things we would never be caught dead saying to other people. And that has to stop, my friends. That has to stop. If you are ever going to lose weight and keep it off, you've got to be nicer to yourself, because guess what? It's a vicious cycle when we, feel bad about ourselves and then we dump on ourselves by saying mean things, having that critical self-talk. Guess what? Then we just eat some more, and then our self-esteem plummets even more, and then we're even more hateful and hurtful toward ourselves, and we can't ever get ahead, and we can't ever have success in really loving our bodies and enjoying our bodies and having our bodies be at the right and perfect weight unless we deal with what's between our ears. So important. And you've heard me talk about these kinds of topics before here, because it truly is weight loss from the inside out. That's what needs to happen. Because face it, you know what to eat, you've done the diets, you've done the exercise, you've done so many things. You have shelves of books on losing weight, and even on mindset and that kind of thing. And it doesn't work, okay? It doesn't work because we have to go deeper. And so this is what I want to talk about today, is the way we regard ourselves and the way we talk to ourselves, because, nobody else is with us 24/7. Nobody lives inside our heads. And that's really where the problem starts, and that's where the problem ends, okay? And the weight loss and the freedom from food addiction, all that is really a byproduct of, healing from the inside out. So what happens when you say mean things to yourselves? What happens when you're calling yourself an idiot, stupid, weak, lazy, just kind of I could think of some things that start with F, some things that start with S, ass. I mean, there's a lot of different things we can say to ourselves, and we do. Unfortunately, we do. And I have to say that this was a huge problem for me, but by the grace of God, my mind is so much freer than it used to be. I'm not cured. I can still lapse into harshing on myself, but I'm telling you, day to day, I'm pretty sweet to myself, and I am my best advocate. And that is a huge 180 from where I used to be. So I'm here to give you hope that that's possible. Now, it's not without a lot of work, and I'm going to talk about that, some of that here. I can't go through everything, my whole system for overcoming emotional eating here, but, my system does work to really heal us of beating ourselves up, and that's key. But I'm going to give you some of the best tips here today. But when we do say mean things to ourselves, when we have that mantra of always dumping on ourselves, never being good enough, never being pretty enough, never being smart enough, never being articulate enough, never being accomplished enough, or getting enough done, or whatever, when we do that, it has some serious deleterious effects, okay? Bad effects on ourselves and on our psyche. Like, it increases our stress. I mean, studies have literally shown that when we're dissing ourselves, when we're real asses to ourselves, it increases our stress level. So guess what? That's going to increase our overeating. The more stressed we are, the more stress eating we're going to do if we're emotional eaters. So it increases stress. It also is shown to decrease our self-esteem. So, the meaner we are to ourselves, the lower our self-esteem. That's a problem, right? Because how we feel about ourselves emanates into the world, and it literally impacts everything in our lives, our relationships, our jobs, our income level, our peace level, our ability to accept good in our lives. So it's really, really important that we turn this around. How we feel and talk to ourselves causes depression, okay? We can literally create our own sense of depression based on how we think about ourselves and what we say to ourselves. So, if you're feeling depressed, if you're down, guess what? There is a way out for that. But that's also, a symptom of overeating. It's crazy because, our eating behaviors are a symptom of how we're talking to ourselves, and then how we're talking to ourselves is a symptom of our overeating. So it is a vicious cycle. It also creates limited thinking, like not having a bigger vision of what we can be and do in our lives. Like when we feel crappy about ourselves and we trash talk ourselves, our world gets very small and we don't feel capable of much. We don't feel worthy of much. And all of a sudden it's like this little crappy job with this crappy pay and this crappy apartment is all we feel like we can have. And that's just not true. But when we think habitually negative thoughts toward ourselves, our world gets really, really small. Also, negative self-talk creates scarcity thinking, believing there's not enough money, believing there's not enough love, believing there's not enough kindness, believing there's not enough, good circumstances, believing, that there's just not enough, whatever, food. I mean, and it can create just this terrible cycle of believing like there's not enough, we have to grab for more, we're in fear constantly of not having enough, not having our needs met. That comes from our negative self-talk. Also feeling defeated all the time, feeling like, oh, what's the use? Why try for that? It's never going to work out for me. That comes from negative thinking, that defeatist attitude. And you hear it in people, that kind of victim-y, defeated, sort of like nothing ever good's going to happen. Why bother? Why try? And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I've been there. You've probably been there. It's like it's a downward spiral. When we start beating on ourselves, we can go down fast, and it's dark down there. It is dark down there. Add to it binging and eating and being obsessed with food and hating our bodies and hating our lives. And, it's downright dangerous to be in our bodies and our minds, right? Perfectionism. This is a big trigger for negative self-talk. And for overeating, believing we have to do things perfectly, that if we can't do it, perfectly, if we can't be the best at it, if we can't shine, why bother, and then beating on ourselves when we don't make the mark, when we don't get the highest grade, when we don't get the promotion, just being so perfectionistic about everything, that just like breeds negative self-talk, and it breeds overeating as well. Paralysis by analysis, when we get so perfectionistic and we want to do it right, and we're going to study and research and learn and get it right, and get an A, and get the highest mark and do it right and make sure we don't mess up, that breeds paralysis, because if we don't have it figured out, we will do nothing, and that just breeds more negative self-talk. What's wrong with you? You're a loser. You can't do anything right. You're never going to get anywhere. Oh my God, it's awful. So we're going to turn that around, okay? Being hypercritical of others. I mean, we're not just dissing ourselves. I mean, we're pretty harsh on other people. Roy once said, other people are getting the spillover of what we're doing to ourselves. ourselves. So if you've noticed that you're super hypercritical of other people, which I think emotional eaters are, we're super critical of ourselves, and then other people are getting the spillover. So when we're hypercritical of other people, it's really, it breeds low self-esteem. It makes us hate ourselves more. And then it also, obviously creates bad relationships. So, so often we are critical of other people, and it's really because we're so critical of ourselves, or we're critical of our kids. We're nitpicky with people. We have that rant going on in our heads. I mean, I've been so critical. I mean, I've thought often, if somebody knew, like if there was a loudspeaker on my mind right now, they would lock me up, or someone would shoot me because I can be so mean in my mind. But guess what? That's also what I'm doing to myself. And then sabotage, people wonder where sabotage comes from. So often it's because we aren't giving ourselves a break. When we're so hard on ourselves, how could we possibly succeed? How could we possibly excel? We're constantly saying this isn't good enough, or the shoe's gonna, the other shoe's gonna drop, or, this is just a fluke. Like, your success is a fluke. This isn't really me. Like, I'm a loser. So this stroke of good luck is going to end. I mean, oh my God, we are so self-sabotaging, and it comes from what's going on in our minds. So I want to talk about where all this negative self-talk comes from. And it comes from a deep-seated sense of worthlessness and self-hatred. And, we're good at that, right? As emotional eaters, we have a deep undercurrent of self-hatred. It is strong, it is deep, and it is like a rushing river, okay, of negativity and just self-loathing. Why? Where did we get this? First of all, we didn't have a strong foundation growing up. Many emotional eaters experience trauma in their childhood, and that trauma just really bred a lot of negative negative feelings about oneself. But even if you had a good childhood, I mean, I had a relatively good childhood, but my parents didn't have self-love, okay? They were very critical, very hard on themselves. I don't think they had a foundation of self-love, and so they couldn't pass it on to me. So I didn't have a strong foundation of like worthiness and self-esteem. And when we don't, what happens is we hate ourselves. We basically hate ourselves. We grow up feeling less than. We grow up feeling unworthy. And perhaps we got strong religious messages that we weren't worthy. Perhaps we had teachers who were mean to us and said we would never amount to anything. Or parents that said that. Whatever it is, wherever we got it from, or wherever we lacked, the strong sense of ourselves, that bred those negative self-concepts and thoughts about ourselves. Also, when I didn't feel like I was good enough, I pretended to be somebody I wasn't. When I thought I wasn't enough, I was inauthentic, and I was a phony, basically. I was out in the world with a big smile on my face, even though I had mounds of pain inside. And I was trying to be the person I thought I should be. I was trying to be funnier than I was. I was trying to be prettier than I was. I was trying to be smarter than I was. I didn't feel like who I was good enough. So I basically became somebody who was not authentically me. And that created self-hatred because I was living a double life. And I felt like, Tricia, you're a phony. Like, that's how I felt. And I didn't ever want to be found out. So that created self-hatred. Also, when we live in fear, and emotional eaters really take the cake, pardon the pun, on fearfulness, okay? We tend to be very fearful, even if we're bold, even if we run companies, even if we're super accomplished in the world, which many emotional eaters are. I mean, we're not overeaters only, we're also overdoers, so we get a lot done, and so we may be very accomplished, and yet there's an underlying fear going on. So it's kind of like the Norton antivirus running in the back of our minds, this fear, this awfulizing, nothing good's ever going to happen, or the shoe's going to drop, or we have to cut corners to get where we need to get, or we need to social climb, and step on others on our climb up. I mean, living in fear makes us have fearful choices, Okay, so when we're in fear, we make fearful choices. Perhaps we don't stand up for principles, because we're afraid of what people will think of us. That makes us hate ourselves. Perhaps we don't, go for the things we want to go for. We settle, we compromise. That makes us hate ourselves. Fear is, I'm telling you, it can eat away at whatever self-esteem we do have, because when we make fearful choices, when we take the low road instead of the high road, it eats at us. It makes us hate ourselves. So that was a big source of self-hatred for me. Also, being critical of other people makes us hate ourselves. The more mean we are in our minds, or actually the more we're actually abusive to other people, of course, that's going to erode our self-esteem and make us hate ourselves. Also, shutting ourselves off from other people. Emotional eaters are great at believing we're not worthy and therefore living in isolation because we don't think other people will find us worthy, or we don't feel worthy of other people's love. So we shut people out. Emotional eaters are good at, we can attract, not so nice people in our lives, but we also can attract, I talk to many of my clients who have husbands who are so sweet. They're so kind, so accepting, whatever weight that person's at. And yet, they can't accept that love. They can't accept that unconditional love from their spouses, and they put up walls. They put up walls by being mean or being critical or just being despondent or shutting down sexually. We shut ourselves off because we don't feel worthy. So that self-hatred runs deep, and it causes a lot of problems. And also, when we're self-obsessed, that makes us hate ourselves as well. When we're around people and we're supposed to be present, supposed to be engaged, and inside we're just thinking about ourselves constantly. How do I look? I don't feel good. Where's dessert? Like, how am I going to get the third dessert without people realizing I'm overeating? That constant self-obsession, that breeds self-hatred as well, because, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be constantly obsessed with ourselves and not really engaged with the world. So the problem is when we hate ourselves, we trash talk ourselves. And so I really want to really delve into how to overcome this, okay? Really, really important that we address this. Now, I will say one caveat is that, when we are actually assholes, calling ourselves on it is not a bad thing. Okay. So we're not peaches, we're not all, we are fundamentally good, but because we can be critical, because we can be mean, because we're in pain, and that, emanates from us at times, we can act badly. And if we do act badly, it's good to call a spade a spade. I'm not talking about justifying bad behavior here or justifying, being a jerk. If we're a jerk, we need to call ourselves on it and recognize it. So, oftentimes people say, oh, don't be hard on yourself. Well, there is a time for being hard on yourself. Okay. So there is a time, if you're an ass, to call yourself on it, make amends for it, and move on. But don't say, oh, I don't want to be mean to myself by just overlooking being an ass. That's not a good plan. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about self-justification. That's only going to cause us to hate ourselves more. So be honest. Be honest. If you're acting badly, clean it up. Call it what it is. Call a spade a spade, and move on. But I'm really talking about that endless stream of self-criticism and feeling that we can't do anything right and will never be anything or amount to anything. Okay, so let's talk about what we can do about this, okay? So really, really important, first of all, that you catch this, okay? The first step to anything is awareness, right? And so observe yourself, observe the thoughts. If we don't stop and observe what we're doing and saying to ourselves, we're never going to overcome it. So that's the very first step, is catch yourself. Catch yourself thinking a nasty thought and say, okay, like, here's a nasty thought coming across the bow here. Let's do something about this. So catching it is the first step. The next thing you can do is challenge it. Okay. So let's challenge that crazy, awful thought. Is that true? Like, is that really true? Is there truth to that? Are you really, the worst person in the world, and if you stop to challenge a crazy negative thought, you can see the insanity of it. Even saying it out loud, like, you're worst person in the world. Oh, you're the most selfish person in the world. Oh, you're the most incompetent person in the world. Let's take a look at that. And so I want you to stand for yourself, stop bullying yourself and stand up to that bully and say, gee, I don't know that that's really true, and play it out, challenge that, take that person to court. Let's look at, under the court of law, what the truth is. And then cross-examine, and see, is this really factual? Is this really true? Of course it's not. Our thoughts are so out there and in complete BS most of the time. So take a look at that, cross-examine yourself, challenge that thought so you can really get some perspective on it. And there might be some truth. It might come from a place of being mad at yourself about something you did. Okay, deal with that. But taking it all the way to the worst in the world or the most something in the world, all that black and white thinking, that has to change, okay? Also, the next thing you can do is, and I do this a lot, is I just say to that negative voice, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I'm going to go this direction. Because so much of the time our negative voices are, you can't do that. You're never going to succeed at that. Or who do you think you are? Stepping out boldly like that. Or taking that new tack in your life. Who do you think you are going for that job? I mean, it's so mean, right? And so it's really important to observe again and then say, thanks for sharing. I'm going to apply for that job anyway. Thanks for sharing, but I think I can bike that distance, or I think I can, do that workout, or whatever it is. I think I can take that trip, and have a good time. So talk to it and just realize it needs to share, right? It needs to beat you up and tell you mean things. So give it its place and say, thanks for sharing. Later, bye, I'm going to go do this now. And so it just sort of brings a little levity to it, and it helps you just realize that it's just a voice. It's just a voice. And you can even name that voice if you want to, terrible Tricia or whatever, the crazy Carla, or whatever you want to call it, name it. Oh, that's crazy Carla, talking shit again, and then move on, and don't let it be who you really are, because it's not who you really are. It's just a negative dark force that you don't have to listen to. That's the key. You do not have to listen to it. You can take contrary action to what it's telling you to do. The next thing is sweet talk yourself. Okay, be super sweet to yourself. So important. Just be really, really sweet to yourself. And this is our job. Our job is to come to love ourselves, and that's not an easy journey. My clients are on that road, and I love showing them a very direct pathway to freedom. And they are overcoming this negative self-talk. They are overcoming being really mean to themselves and self-abusive with food. But it's a journey, and I remind them of that all the time. They have to walk this path and do, these steps, and the disciplines that it takes to overcome emotional eating, and they will come out of it. But it takes time, and it is a journey. So the journey is one of self-love. So be sweet to yourself. Start being sweet to yourself. Sweet talk yourself. When I'm afraid and I'm telling myself terrible things, I'll just sort of realize it's fear. And I'll say, oh, Tricia, of course you can do this. Of course it's going to be okay. Of course, sweetheart, it's going to work out. And I just sort of talk lovingly to that sweet child that is so afraid and doesn't believe anything good's going to happen in the moment. That fearful, sweet child needs love. She needs sweet talking. So give her that. And lastly, start affirming the opposite of what your mind is telling you. Okay, so important to affirm positive things to yourself. I do believe in positive affirmations. That's not the whole picture. That's not going to get you where you need to go. You're not going to end emotional eating just by saying, I love myself and I'm free from food today. There's a lot other steps, many other steps in between that are necessary, but a very important step is starting to have positive self-talk, and affirmations can be a great way to start training your mind to think more positively and to focus on the positive. So just affirming the opposite. If you keep saying, you find yourself saying, I can't do this like a mantra. And that used to be my mantra. I can't, because I was so afraid. I'm like, there's no way I can possibly, I was afraid to go into fifth grade. I'm like, I can't possibly make it in fifth grade. And I'd have to talk to myself like, Trish, there's a whole lot of other people who went to 5th grade and they made it through. So probably you can too. But start affirming. If you're saying, I can't do this job, or I can't ever be happy or whatever, just find an affirmation that works for you. Like, I am happy, joyous, and free, healthy, wealthy, and wise, or I am happy, satisfied, and abundantly blessed. Find something that resonates for you, write it down, and say that every day. It is going to impact your psyche. So important. Again, that alone's not going to turn the boat, for around, but definitely that and the other important steps that it takes to really heal your life will. So the 5 things I want you to remember are catching yourself and observing yourself when you're having those negative thoughts and terrible, terrible rants towards yourself. Challenge the thought, okay? Like bring it to court, and cross-examine. Thank it for sharing. Just give it its due and say, thank you for sharing, and then ignore it. Do what you need to do anyway, what your higher self wants you to do, your spirit, your divine spirit. Sweet talk yourself. Recognize that so much of the negativity comes from fear, so be super sweet to yourself. And lastly, start affirming the opposite. Okay, find some affirmations that are positive and affirming and can help you remember the truth. So important. The truth of who you are and the truth of what you can become in the process of your healing journey. So most important, I will say, address and heal emotional eating. Like if you continue to be in the food, stuff in your brain is never going to come around, because there's nothing that breeds self-hatred more than being out of control with food and just, hurting ourselves with food. That's such a dark place. I don't think you're going to be able to just pop out of that. So definitely don't forget to heal emotional eating. That's so important, because that naturally is going to make you feel better. And then when you're doing it in a community like the Heal Your Hunger community of people who are doing it too, you feed off of each other and encourage each other and up-level each other's thoughts as you remind each other of how good and powerful and wonderful you are. So join us on that journey. And I do offer free emotional eating breakthrough sessions if you want to learn about that. And also if I can help you just even with a few things right now that you can change to help you really up-level your thoughts towards yourself and your life. So you can find a link to that in the show notes. But thanks so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure, and I love you so much. And I wish for you a positive, loving, self-caring day. Take care, and I'll see you in the next show.
If you enjoyed this podcast and want to get free support, insider health info, exclusive invites to events, and more, visit healyourhunger.com.